Hello, 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 and welcome to the Compass PD podcast, where we dive into evidence-based practices and research-driven strategies that empower educators and leaders to make a lasting impact. I'm Dr. Carrie Hepburn, your host, and I have my good friend here, Hannah Patterson. She is a licensed professional counselor and has her Master's of Education. Hannah provides school-based counseling services to students and families. Hi, Hannah.
Hi, thanks so much for having me on today. I'm really excited to share some of my insight and experiences with you.
Yay, I am really excited too. Hannah and I have had countless conversations over the years about the changes we've witnessed, shifts in education, evolving behaviors, and the challenges that come with them. Through these discussions, I've been fortunate to gain valuable insights from Hannah. Given her role as a school-based counselor, I was curious about how she manages the emotional weight of her work. She hears stories and struggles and tragedies every day. And so, in today's episode, we're going to explore practical strategies to help you thrive as an educator, help you balance academic demands with social emotional learning needs of your students, and prioritize your well being. Our organization has recognized the importance of this topic, which is why we're excited to welcome Hannah, who is a licensed counselor with extensive experience in supporting students and educators while maintaining her emotional resilience. So, as we get started here, Hannah, I'm going to just kind of like bombard you with questions, and I just want you to just give us all the things, okay? Does that sound
Yeah,
good?
absolutely. Yes.
Great. Okay, let's start with this. How can educators proactively, so the key in that being proactively, support themselves and their students for success using trauma-informed strategies?
Yeah. So such a heavy question, right? So many
Mhm.
things to go along with this. First, I just want to say thank you to the educators that are listening. The work that you
Mm.
guys do day in and day out is just so important for other educators and students. And so just thank you for all the work that you do and all the unseen work that gets done behind the scenes. So I just want to start out first of kind of sharing like the why, before we can get into the how, the why of some research based information on specifically the brain and then just kind of development for students. And then I'll kind of get into the how of proactively implementing those strategies. So
Perfect.
yeah. So for research-based trauma-informed care, long couple of words strewn in there, but this is just basically research that's talking about trauma-informed care. It says that the amygdala develops before the prefrontal cortex. So why does this matter for us, right? The
Hmm.
amygdala is responsible for sensory information. So this is like emotions, fight or flight responses, and it never forgets. So interesting fact.
Right.
Yeah, and then the prefrontal cortex is responsible for judgment, reasoning, self-regulation, cause and effect, and like planning and priority setting. So, an example of kind of how the amygdala develops before the prefrontal cortex is like a lot of times teens will experience new powerful emotions before they can articulate them. And I'm sure we've seen this
Yeah.
in students before, right? Like experiencing
Right.
those powerful emotions before articulating. And that goes back to the amygdala, developing before the prefrontal cortex. So, as we have probably heard, there's various responses to stress that our brain goes through. We've all heard of fight or flight, I'm sure, at one point or another.
Hmm.
There's actually a few other ones too. So, fight can be the loss of temper or defensiveness, flight is that avoidance. And then there's also freeze, so like that numbing or detachment, which I'm sure we've seen in the classroom before, of just kind of like detaching. Um, Also faint. So this is just when like a student just collapses, like just shuts down, and then fooling around or fidgeting is the last one. So those are all the responses to stress that our brain goes through or can go through. So different forms of trauma, right? While we're talking about trauma, there can be family trauma, personal trauma, environmental trauma. It just kind of varies person to person. But one thing I wanted to bring up that I've learned through different trainings and stuff is trauma says react first and think later. And so
Mm,
when we talk about that, like that just makes so much sense.
right.
But we don't always think about that. So I'll say it again, just to kind of reiterate a little bit, but like trauma says react first and then think later. So one statistic that really caught my eye in one of my trainings that I did was children who are exposed to 5 or more experiences of trauma in the first 3 years of childhood face a 76% likelihood in having 1 or more delays in language, emotional, or brain development. So,
Oh,
yeah, right? So,
yeah.
not, not only are they experiencing these traumatic events, it can also have a really lasting impact on their schooling education or their life, far beyond when they experienced it. That's kind of our why, right? So we've gone into the brain development. Why do
Mhm.
we need to know this? Very interesting stuff that can lead us into our how. So, um, one of the proactive ways that we can help as educators, as supporters, is just kind of strength based teaching. So,
Mm,
mindset of believing everyone has capabilities within themselves.
mhm.
So, like, how did you get through that? What did you do? Kind of that overcoming, kind of creating a safe environment, right? Like, school might be one of the places that they feel most safe, and creating that safe environment for them to come to. Also modeling self-regulation ourselves. That's easier said than done, right? Like, especially if
Right.
there's things going on all around us that are just not regulating, but helping them by modeling that self-regulation at times. Um, and so, that connectedness, research shows that connectedness can help in that research-based trauma-informed care. So connectedness with relationships, it can be adult relationships or friendships. Exercise, new learning, sleep is a very
Mm,
important one as well.
mhm.
And then positive thinking and gratitude. So those are all kind of the things that can help. As I go into
Okay.
each strategy, it's going to be different for every kid, right? What works for one student might not work for another student. So it's really
Mhm.
just finding what helps them the most and what can benefit them. So I'll just kind of go through some examples of things that could be helpful that, as educators, you all wear many hats, right? You're not just an educator, you're a supporter, you're a family member, you're, a teacher, child relationship, your could be a parent. So there's lots of hats that you wear in your everyday
Mhm.
life. And so, just helping them try to find what works for them while also helping regulate yourself. Um, so as far as examples, some students may just need a break from class, right? They might feel overwhelmed or upset or overstimulated. And that can go back to our like 5 F's of the responses. So they might fight, they might freeze, they might flight. And that's their way of like reacting first and thinking later,
Mhm.
of
Mhm.
feeling overwhelmed or overstimulated. So some examples of a break from class, like could they possibly, if the option is available, sit in the hallway for 5 to 7 minutes? Could they take a piece of paper and a pencil out there and just doodle or draw? And then rejoin after that 5 to 7 minutes. So, a timer, can they set a timer? And once that timer goes off, rejoin. I think sometimes it can be really helpful for them to just get a break for those couple minutes to kind of regulate, find their calm,
Mhm.
and then go back into the classroom. So
Mhm.
that could be one option. I know fidgets are a huge thing. Fidgets can be
Yes.
helpful. They can also be
Uh-huh.
distracting and all
Yes.
the things. But fidgets can also be helpful if it is a fidget that is, self-regulating for them without being distracting to others. Can they, if they go into the hallway, can they bring a fidget with them and fidget? Um, can you keep it at your desk as an educator and they can sit at your desk for 5 to 7 minutes with the fidget and then rejoin?
Mhm.
Um, I know sometimes I do coping strategies with kiddos. So this can be just anything that really helps them calm down. So these can be deep breathing, meditation, finding a happier, calm place. Um, I do one that's called the 5 colors. So they pick a color for 5, and then they get to name 5 things around the room that are that color. And then they go to 4 and pick a color, and they name 4 things around the room that are that color. And then they kind of go down from there,
Mhm.
just as a grounding technique to kind of bring them back into the space. So sometimes if, it's allowed, or, space allows, you can kind of make a coping strategy card with them and put it on their desk for them to have a visual. Each classroom is different, each age is different. So some of these might
Right,
pertain more to elementary school or high school, or, kind of different age groups as well.
right, right.
Um,
I'm,
but
I'm sorry. I'm just like sitting here thinking some of these things are just best practices. Like how can we um, set our classrooms up for success? So one of the things that I see a lot are just like a lot of things, or everything's moving at a rapid pace. If you are in elementary, we're rushing from one finishing, hurry up and finish this, and now we're starting this. And this is just kind of the system that we're in. And then when I'm in secondary schools, like middle school or high school, they go from class to class to class, and it's like, get in the classroom, open up your computer, and get started working immediately. So there's no breath. And
yeah,
sometimes I'm just like, I wonder what would happen if we took a moment and gave that space some breath, that
yeah,
we just let us end one thing and then slowly go into the next. And what I'm hearing from you is you're not asking somebody in any of this to take up a huge amount of time,
right,
right? So maybe we don't have 5 to 7 minutes, but what would happen if we had a 2 minute slow transition? Or,
yeah,
like, we're going to finish this up. We're going to stick with a really strong schedule so you know what to expect, which feels safe. And then
yeah,
let's just kind of slowly introduce ourselves into this new space. And that kind of reminded me too of like your coping strategies, the deep breathing, the meditation, like, oh, think about what worked well, what maybe didn't work so well. Let's get into the space for the next thing. Even like the 5 colors, it's just slowly reintroducing us into it feels more humane.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I know teachers too that have really implemented, like, they call them brain breaks.
Hmm.
Um, and just having that, like you said, it could be 2 minutes of a transition where they just have everyone get up and, like, stretch or lead them through a breathing exercise.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like giving their brain a break, because we're so up here all the time in
Hmm.
school, and it's, not as, we're not moving our body as much. We're not activating the creative side of our brain as much. It's more logical. And so kind of having those like brain breaks where you can
Hmm.
transition to the next thing, but in a
Hmm.
way that is helpful, and also giving your students kind of that mini break so that they can rejoin afterwards and hopefully have a better focus.
Hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. Those transitions are extremely important sometimes.
Well, this is
Yeah.
so good. I apologize. I just had to jump right in for a
No,
second.
no, absolutely. So yeah, going on those coping strategies too, like journaling can be really helpful for kids, elementary age or high school or middle school.
Hmm.
And I think when we think of journaling, we think of like writing down our thoughts, right? Which is
Right.
helpful and that is
Hmm.
great. But it doesn't just have to be writing. It can be drawing, it can be scribbling. If you're just like really, really angry and just need to draw scribbles like really hard all over a paper, that's considered, a coping strategy. You're getting your emotions out.
Right.
And so, can they have a journal where they keep at the teacher's desk and use it on that transition or that break, for those 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes to do what
Hmm.
they need to do and then rejoin. And then I know a big one for a lot of kids is music. This isn't always accessible in the classroom or at school.
Hmm.
So, using your discretion of like, if they have free time at some point, or if there's a calming space in the classroom or outside of the classroom where they can, or just encouraging them to do it at home. It's just kind of whatever is most helpful.
Hmm.
So those are kind of all my not all of them, but a list of a lot of the coping strategies because we could go on and on all night for
We
coping
could.
strategies. But just grounding techniques, deep breathing can work for some kids. Like I said, some kids works for them and some kids need something different. So just helping them
Hmm.
find what works for them. Um,
Great.
and I
So
know
great.
too, yeah, we talked a lot about, just there is a concern and a need for help with maybe some serious or more high risk students. Because we are seeing
Hmm.
some more high risk students in the classroom that just need that extra support. And so a lot of times, just some things that popped up for me that I thought of when we were talking about it was if possible, I know we had a really honest conversation the other day of like some schools don't have school counselors or they
Hmm.
don't have that extra resource. If they do, that's a great resource to use for high risk students. But if not, as an educator, some things that we can do are just outlining a safety plan with a student. So as far as a safety plan, the things that it includes are their healthy coping strategies. So, what gets you through the next 5 minutes, right? What is a coping strategy that you can do in school? And I try to specify like what's something you can do in school and what's something you can do at home. And if they're higher risk at school than at home, like if something just triggers them at school, more than home, focusing more on school, but also having home, or vice versa. So it includes their healthy coping strategies. It also includes their triggers. So like what triggers you, right? Is it a smell? Is it a thing a person says? Is it, something that you see in the classroom, or just kind of like identifying what kind of triggers those emotions, those thoughts, those feelings, and then just kind of being able to know those in on the safety plan. And then also support systems. So this is at school and at home. Do they have a favorite teacher that they can go to and spend time with? Do they have a parent or a guardian at home? Do they have someone they can contact over the phone?
Hmm.
That's readily available if they need them, a grandma, a grandparent, a friend, and just kind of like who are your support systems? I usually do try to make sure that they have at least one adult at school and at home, because friends are a great support system.
Hmm.
And a lot of times, we want to make sure that they have some sort of adult that can help them in that situation too, if they're
Hmm.
having really high risk or serious things go on. So that's kind of like an overview of a safety plan and kind of
Hmm.
how you can help support them just by writing it up, drawing it up, whatever works best for them. So a lot of times these high risk students can have triggers in the classroom or have these behaviors in the classroom that we're seeing that are reactions or responses to what they're feeling. And so, a lot of times, can they also have a break? Whether it's, if they're really high risk,
Hmm.
can it be in the classroom where you have eyes on them? Or can they sit in another teacher's classroom? I know some teachers have calm down corners. That's what they call them. And so, can they sit in a calm down corner or just a
Hmm.
corner in the classroom where you have, eyes on them? Can they go over their safety plan by themselves? What can get them through the next 5 minutes so they can transition? Um,
Hmm.
so those were some things that I thought of with that. And also, I think as educators, it's super important that we familiarize ourselves with resources in the area. So, like, what are some resources as far as do they have any resources in your area for, text lines, help lines, call lines? I know like 988 is the suicide hotline that they can call or text at any time. So, just kind of familiarizing yourself with like what could be helpful for a student in this situation, and supplying them with those resources as well.
I love that. Thank you for the reminder that we have resources also within the community and to be aware of those, the importance of that. Those are things that are our current reality now and
Absolutely.
they are excellent resources that can be supportive and help us be able to educate the students, but
Yeah,
also ensure that they're in safe spaces and thriving. That's what we all want in the end is for them to thrive and get
absolutely.
them through this tough time. So, okay. Thank you for that. All
Yeah.
right. let's talk now. How can educators navigate the pressure of balancing social emotional learning and academic needs?
Man, such a another big question. And I think that
I
keyword could be
know.
balancing, right? I think that's a tough word because you have so much going on both sides. That academic need
Hmm.
is so high and that social emotional learning is so high. And so
Hmm.
yeah, I think one of the things that we talked about is like those questions of what if students just don't want to work, or what happens if they don't want to do the work that we're doing? How can we help support them and make sure that they have what they need to be successful?
Right.
Um, so a couple ideas that I kind of thought of was that negotiating part,
Hmm.
and this can be easier with some students than others, just kind of feeling out what is working for them. But I do know that there can sometimes be like behavior charts, if you will, or
Hmm.
kind of just a reward system. So for the negotiating part of kind of can you work really hard, really focused for 15 minutes. And then after that 15 minutes, we take a break for 3 minutes, set that timer, do
Hmm.
what you need to do. And then
Hmm.
after that 3 minutes is up, can we work really hard and focus for 15 more minutes? And then, kind of take that break or whatever you feel is best for that minute
Hmm.
judgment. Because sometimes it is just, they just need that break of,
Hmm.
I'm feeling super overwhelmed. I don't even understand what this assignment is saying.
Hmm.
And just taking that break sometimes can just rejuvenate their, okay, I took my break. I'm ready to focus for a few more minutes. And I think that attainable
Right.
goal is important. Like
Yep.
we're not asking them to sit down and work really hard for an hour and then they get a break. It's that 15 minutes goes by really quick and then we get that break at the end. So kind of
Right.
that negotiating part with them, if you will. Um, I think too with that, a lot of times it's hard to have that strength based mindset when we're seeing a lot of pushback in the classroom or things are just hard that day. And so focusing on some strengths can sometimes help a student figure out what they're strong and good at too. So
Hmm.
what are you strong and good at? What do you like? What subject is something that you're interested in? What
Hmm.
qualities do you have that can help you in this situation? So kind of helping remind them like you have qualities that can help you in this situation. We just got to figure out what they are so that we can work through this together. Um,
Hmm.
so having that strength-based mindset can be helpful. And if the opportunity arises, asking them what's going on at home can sometimes be helpful. I think a lot of times students don't want to talk about it or it doesn't get brought up, so they don't have a chance to talk about it. And sometimes it is just, school is their safe space and they feel safe enough to show behaviors that they might not be able to show at home or
Right.
things like that. So, if the opportunity arises, being able to talk to them about, hey, I have this social emotional learning and we also have academic needs that need to be met. How can I best help support you in that with what's going on in your life? Um,
Hmm.
Sometimes the option doesn't arise to be able to do that with every single student when we have 20 plus kids in a classroom, right? And
Right.
so, just keeping that in mind as we're going throughout our day if the opportunity arises. With um, kind of what I mentioned earlier about the negotiating part, there's also that reward system. So I think I kind of mentioned that and touched on it. But as far as I have seen this work a lot, but it does depend on the student, right? So,
Hmm.
what is something that they like or want? So, an example could be lunch with a teacher as the reward. I know a lot of times lunch is our break. So it's like, I don't want to be in the classroom at lunchtime, but is there a day out of the week where if they do achieve their goal that they can have lunch with if they would like?
Hmm.
Or can a teacher that one of their favorite teachers in that grade play with them at recess if they have recess, if they are elementary age?
Hmm.
Or can they have a specific job in the classroom if there are jobs in the classrooms? I know a lot of teachers kind of teach that responsibility and that accountability with different jobs in the classroom. So, like so and so is in charge of doing this for the day, or, whatever it may be, can they achieve a job in the classroom that they really want? So, whatever the reward is they're looking forward to, that can kind of be that reward, and then setting attainable goals with that. So
Hmm.
again, the big word is attainable. We don't want to push it to where they're not ever going to be able to make that reward, but elementary age, breaking their day into different segments, and then can you get 6 out of 10 smiley faces for me throughout the day? And if you break it into 10 segments, can we have 15 minutes of in each subject that you worked really hard to achieve that reward?
Hmm.
Can we achieve or do a certain amount of work before we get that reward? So if we finish this worksheet, can we work toward a reward together? So kind of being able to find those attainable goals for them, and then also a reward that they really like, so that there's a reason that they want to be able to attain those goals.
Right. Can I just say something that as you're talking about navigating that pressure of balancing social emotional learning and academic needs, in all of the things that you've just chatted about, I keep hearing a common thread of relationships and having really strong relationships with our kids so that we know them. And I understand when you have 125 students or 150 students, that's a lot, but um, relationships are how we're going to be able to support the kids the best. And there is research out there, and I can't remember who used to share it all the time, but that you need to know three things about each student that has nothing to do with their academics, like their life, them personally, before you can teach them. So when they know that you've invested in them, especially our students that are struggling with trauma and really challenging past um, situations and current, so for some of our kids, current situations, them knowing that you know them enough, that you care enough to know about them and have this kind of information about them, like Hannah was talking about, that we can negotiate because we know our kids well enough. We can provide rewards that align with what they like. We can create alternative kinds of assessments or learning based on their strengths. So that's what just kept coming out to me as you were chatting was we have to really take that time to build those relationships. As we've talked about all of these things, here's the hard part though, Hannah. Now, how can educators take care of themselves emotionally after taking care of everyone else and experiencing challenging incidents or situations? What do they do? How do they take care of them?
Yeah, that's such a great question. And I think for adults in general, not just for educators, but just adults in general, I think this topic can get really pushed under the rug because it's, do your best and, go day to
Mhm.
day and just get through the day. And all that is important. And we also have to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves so that we can show up for our
Mhm.
students and for our other educators every day. And so, one thing that I think of is like vicarious trauma is real. And when I say vicarious trauma, it's hearing traumatic stories and hearing
Mhm.
traumatic things from a student or from a parent can
Mhm.
also affect you. That is a real thing, right? And
Mhm.
so, what you hear and see every day can absolutely affect you in some way or another. And it can also be a trigger for you depending on your experiences and what you've gone through. So just being mindful of that, like, use that giving yourself grace. I love that phrase because it is so needed. And so giving yourself grace too when you do feel like, oh, that really got to me what they shared with me. I wonder why. And just kind of digging more into that. But I think self-care, what educators do is hard day in and day out, right? That's no easy job. And so,
Mhm.
like we've talked about, you might be one of the only positive influences, adult influences in a student's life. And
Mhm.
so that can bear some weight, right? And making sure that you're showing up for that student. Um,
Right.
so some self-care things that I thought of was just, your own therapist. There's no shame in seeking additional help to process those things that you see and hear every day.
Mhm.
And making sense of, or help trying to make sense of what you're hearing and seeing every day, and just having an open and confidential space to be able to talk about that, and having your own support system as well. Doesn't have to just be a therapist, but your own support system outside of that too, with friendships or adult relationships or spouses, or
Mhm.
just different relationships that are positive relationships for you that can be a support for you. um, Another one that I thought of can be your own journal, right? And so, like we talked about
Mhm.
earlier, journaling isn't just writing out your feelings.
Right.
It can be, and you can just jot down all the things that you felt that day. But it can also be drawing or coloring, writing. Like I mentioned earlier, the right side of our brain is very logic, judgment, like all the logistical things or analytical things. And I think we use that a lot throughout our school day. We're teaching, we're supporting, we're administering, we're doing all these things. And so activating the right side of the brain, which is creativity and emotion, can really help us process through that day.
Mhm.
And so journaling can be a great way to do that. Um, what is something you enjoy? Just do it, right? So if
Right.
time and space allows, over the weekend after a particularly tough week, or in the evening, what is something you enjoy? Just do it. Take some time for you to be able to engage in something that you find joyful, to kind of be
Mhm.
able to reestablish that joy and that positivity. Um,
Love it.
I think decompressing after a long day can be really helpful. And depending on your drive, it could just be your drive home is your decompression
Mhm.
time. Being alone in your car, listening to music, or, just kind of decompressing in a way that helps you decompress.
Mhm.
Those car rides can be so helpful after a particularly long day where you're just like sitting in the car, like, oh my goodness, that was such a crazy day. I don't even know what happened. It was a whirlwind, and just kind of making yourself be able to decompress. And it can be 5 to 10 minutes, like I said, or if your drive is 30 minutes, being able to use
Mhm.
that whole time. I know exercise can also be a great one. Sometimes I
Yes.
know for myself, it's sometimes harder to get up and get moving after a particularly long day or before a long day. But
Right.
exercise, moving your body can there's research out there with different endorphins that it releases that just helps you find that joy and that
Mhm.
positivity. Could be exercising, could also be just like taking a hot shower,
Mhm.
or journaling or reading a book. Some people like cleaning, if that brings you
I
joy, clean,
I have no
something.
idea. Oh my gosh, that's crazy. No,
I
I
know, I know. So yeah,
cleaning.
cleaning, whatever
Wow.
you want. So yeah, just kind of finding what that joy is for you, that self-care, having your own support system, communicating with loved ones too.
Mhm.
I think of, like, particularly after a long day, you come home and there's just this, that, and the other with kids and spouses, or,
Mhm.
the dog needs to go out, or, there's things going on that just, they don't stop once we're done with work. And so, just
Right.
communicating with loved ones too, of like, I had a particularly rough day today,
Mhm.
I just need 5 minutes by myself, or
Mhm.
I just need to take a deep breath. I just need to, do this or do that. And giving yourself grace enough too, where it's okay to say no to things,
Mhm.
if needed. So, after a particularly long day where you're just emotionally drained,
Mhm.
that if it can wait, it can wait, and just kind of
Yeah.
taking time for yourself. So, self care is a really important piece, not just for educators, I think, but for everyone.
Mhm.
But especially for educators, because you guys are doing the hard work and the heart work too, like,
Right.
emotionally,
Right.
mentally, it's all in there. So those are some ideas I have for self care too.
Oh my gosh. This is so good. This is so good. As you were going through some of those self-care things, I will have to tell you that some of those are my favorite that I would do. I know that a group of us at work started going to Zumba classes 2 days a week after school on Tuesdays and Thursdays. It was a game changer for us. It was like two or three girls that we were in the same PLC and we just needed something fun. And it ended up changing the year for us. We were with the hardest class. You get those every few years. We know that. And we started going to this class. And by the time we got home to our families, we were much better family members than we were had we came directly home from school. I have
Yeah.
friends that they would go on walks, like they at recess time or on their break, they and a colleague would go on a walk and just walk and talk and get it all out. And then they were ready for the rest of their day and they were ready by the time they got home. So it didn't all just keep building. I know that I just gave two examples that had to do with like movement, but I do think there's a lot of good, healthy there's value in movement. And then the shower, when you mentioned the shower, just like it feels almost like a metaphor, like you're just washing the day, all the things that have happened, just kind of washing those away and able to start fresh as you enter that new space in your home and getting going. So all of this was
Yeah.
so great, Hannah. I am so thankful. You helped us think about setting ourselves up for success um, by learning some more about um, being trauma informed. And then we moved into navigating those social emotional learning challenges. And trying to balance that with the academic needs, and then the importance of us caring for ourselves emotionally so that we can sustain our work as an educator. So, so good. What
Good.
we really
Yeah.
hope is like this conversation has given you tools to better support your students and yourself. And we want to remind you that caring for your students starts with first you caring for yourself. And Hannah, you really reminded us of that, and I'm so grateful for that.
Yeah, yeah, no, I appreciate you having me on, and I hope that some piece of information sticks with, someone that is really needing just some ideas for, like you said, just setting up success, navigating challenges, and then, even if it's a piece for themselves to take with them too. Absolutely.
Mhm. Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us, Hannah. And we want to remind all of you that at Compass PD, we believe every educator has the power to inspire, change, and transform student learning. Stay focused, stay inspired, and keep making a difference.